Hello, my amazing Algebra Half students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. Today, we're doing lesson 103 in our Addition 2 book, but I could not find a matching assignment in the Addition 3, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, so here we are doing advanced equations, and all we have to really learn on this assignment is to simplify both sides of the equation first. In the past, we've just had things to simplify on one side. Now we have things to simplify on both sides before we can begin collecting our like terms. So here on this side, on the left side, we've got two x terms. So 6x plus x would be 7x. We also have two constant terms. -5 and -2 would be -7. But notice that on the other side, we also have some like terms to group together. So we've got 2x plus another x is 3x minus the 3. So now that we have simplified both sides as much as we can, now we start to worry about getting all of our x's in one place. So since I have an x term here and an x term there, I'm going to subtract a 3x from both sides of the equation. So now I'm going to have 4x minus 7 equals a -3. Okay, now our goal is to get the x term by itself first. So I will add a 7 and add a 7, and I'm out of room. But now what do I get? So we'll just put our answer over here. We get a 4x. This cancels. 4x equals, and then 7, positive 7 and a -3 is a 4. So lastly, I will divide by 4 on both sides, and I will find out that x is equal to 1. So I have solved my equation. Now to check it, should I be able to put x is equal to 1 back into every x and have it come out correctly? Okay, so x is 1 is pretty easy, isn't it? Because it's just going to make that a 6, and that a 1, and that a 2, and that a 1. So 6 minus 5 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. So this side equals 0. Now let's see what this side equals. 2 minus 3 is -1, plus 1 is also 0. And we can see that, yes, 1 is the solution. Here is our second and last example, because this really is a pretty easy concept. All we do that's new is simplify both sides before we begin to add and subtract using the addition property of equality to get all of our x terms on one side and all of our constant terms on the other. All right, so here we go. We have a 3x and a -x. So on this side, we're going to simplify to 2x minus 2. On this side, we have a 4 and a 3 that are like terms. They're both constants, so we end up with an x plus 7. So now that we've simplified, now we're ready to get all of our x's in one place. So I usually like to have my x's on the left. So I'm just going to go ahead and subtract. The -x is now going to cancel the positive x, and we're going to get 2x minus x is 1x minus 2 equals 7. Now I want to get my 1x by itself. So I will add a 2 and add a 2, and I get 1x, which is the same as x. This cancels, equals 9x equals 9. Now, let's go back and check, right? So 3 times 9 would be 27, minus 2, minus 9. Does that equal 4 plus 9 plus 3? Okay, let's check. 27 take away 2 is 25. And 25 take away 9 is 16. It's hard to do that in my head. So 16 on the left. On the right, we get 13 plus 3 is 16 on the right. And it works. So our correct answer was x equals 9. Okay, so we're done with our examples, and this is your first practice problem. I told you this was a quick lesson. All right, so I want you to copy it down and pause your video. Now, we're going to add the like terms on one side and get a 3x plus 4. On the other side, we only have one x term. Negative 6 and a positive 8 is a positive 2. We want to get all of our x's on one side. We've done the simplify step, so now we're going to subtract an x, subtract an x. 2x plus 4 equals 2. Now we need to get rid of the 4 because we want the x term by itself, minus 4 on both sides. 2x cancels out, negative 2. Divide by 2 to get our x term by itself. Divide by 2, and x equals negative 1. So let's go back. And we're going to have a negative 1 minus a 2 plus a 4. Does that equal a negative 1? And then a minus a 6 plus an 8. Okay, so negative 1 and a negative 2 is a negative 3 plus a 4 is a 1 on the left. And then negative 1 and a negative 6 is a negative 7 plus an 8 is a 1 on the right. We got it equaled on the top, so x is equal to negative 1 is the solution. So that was your first practice problem. And this is the last problem, the last practice. So copy it down and pause your video. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is gather our like terms on each individual side of the equation. So on the left, we have a 2 and a 4 that are constant terms. So 6 plus the x equals. On the right, we have 2 constant terms. So 3x plus 2 plus 5 is 7. Now we've simplified. Now we begin to get all of our x's in one place. So I could either subtract an x from both sides or subtract a 3x from both sides. I'm just going to go ahead and subtract an x from both sides, but I'm going to end up at the end moving my x to the left because I like to do that. So we're going to subtract minus x and minus x. So we get 6 equals 2x plus 7. Now the reason I did it to the right instead of to the left like I usually do is because I ended up with a positive x value. And most students have an easier time dealing with positive x values than negative x values. So anytime I can, I will usually go in the direction of getting a positive x value. So now here's my x term. So I want to get rid of this 7 to get my x term by itself. Minus 7, this cancels. I get a 2x equals negative 1. So divide by 2, divide by 2. I've got a fraction, don't I? So now my x equals negative 1/2. So now let's go check it back here. So we've got 2 plus 4 is 6 minus 1/2. We'll come back and do that in a minute. So 3 times minus 1/2 is a negative 3/2 plus 7. Okay, so let's see if these equal each other. I can turn my 6 into 12 halves. isn't 12 halves equal to 6? I'm getting a common denominator, right? So I'm going to take away my 6 and make it 12 halves. So 12 halves minus 1 half is 11 halves. So I have 11 halves on the left, and then I'm going to turn this into a fraction that has a 2 on the bottom. So I'm going to multiply the top. Remember, this is a 7 over 1. So I multiply the top and the bottom by 2, and I get 14 halves. Now 14 halves replaces the 7. So I have 14 halves take away 3 halves is 11 halves. And since both sides equaled each other, when I put the negative 1 half in there, it assures me that, yes, the answer is x is negative 1 half. And we have finished our lesson. This is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.